Hello everyone, and Merry Christmas! Today's video is not going to be holiday related at all. I considered waiting to do this review, but I've already had to postpone it several times, and I'd like to get it done before the end of the year. So today, ho ho ho, here are my thoughts on 2024's Alien Romulus. Directed by Fede Alvarez, Alien Romulus is the latest entry in the Alien franchise. It takes place between the events of 1979's Alien and 1986's Aliens. Kaylee Spaney stars as a young woman who, with her android companion, joins the crew of a mining hauler that travels to an abandoned space station seeking salvage. They soon find out that alien life forms are on board. I had several people ask me if I was going to go see this when it came out this summer, but I chose to wait. Not a hard decision to make, since I don't really like going to see things in the movie theater, and I don't think my heart could take big screen xenomorph jump scares. I should probably mention, for those of you who don't know, I've seen the original Alien 3 or 4 times. I've seen Aliens at least half a dozen times. I just watched Alien 3 last month. I've seen part of Resurrection, part of the 2 AVP movies. I saw Prometheus, and I saw most of Covenant. I like Alien. It's a great horror movie. I'm not inclined to rewatch it too often just because I don't want to get too used to the scares. Aliens, I'm always up for a rewatch of that, and I love it more every time I see it. Everything after, the third and fourth films have their moments, but I just don't care about the convoluted lore of the Prometheus films. Any links I have to previous reviews, I'll try to remember to include in the description. I've talked about Aliens several times, so I might not include every review of that I've done. However, despite my reservations about the sequels, I did get excited about this movie. It had a thrilling teaser and trailer, it had a bold poster, I heard encouraging rumors about its production, and immediately after its release, I heard mostly positive reviews. Since then, I feel like some of the enthusiasm has cooled. It was being hailed by some one of the best movies of the summer and the best Alien movie since the second one. And now I don't hear much buzz about it. I don't hear people still talking about it much, but maybe I'm just not listening to the right people. I did just see a headline talking about a sequel announcement. My reaction to that was, already? We're already talking about a sequel? This one just came out on Blu-ray. And I did not like finding out that there's going to be a sequel before I'd even watched the movie, because that told me that however this ended, it would be only temporary. But I understand that is the cost of waiting to watch something. So what did I think of Alien Romulus? It was okay. It had some sequences that were quite good, but it's weighed down by some regrettable choices. For everything I had a positive reaction to, there was something else I had a negative reaction to. This was kind of a Newton's third law movie response. Before I go further, let me issue a spoiler warning. It is going to be a few minutes before I start dropping details, but for those of you who haven't seen the film yet and intend to, there might be some things I talk about here that you'd rather not know, so I want to give you a heads up now. As it is with most of these films, it takes a while for things to start happening, and for the first half or so, the movie's 2 hours long, I was disappointed that it wasn't that scary, it wasn't super interesting, but the action does ramp up eventually, and I did become tense, and I grabbed a pillow to hide behind. I didn't use it much, but I did require a little bit of protection in the second half. I think what I liked most were the sets and the effects. There are some very cool visuals with slow, teasing reveals of the xenomorph, or the xenomorph, as one character says it here. That pronunciation was jarring. I particularly appreciate the consistency of the spacecraft designs and their technology with those of the first two movies. Even though this was a 2024 production and science fiction films look different now, it maintains the artistic quality of the older films, which helped the environment and the period between Alien and Aliens feel more convincing. Sets, models, miniatures, etc. are recreated or imitated with great attention to detail, and I think the labor of love pays off. I also thought it was fun to have the place crawling with facehuggers, showing them as a dominant threat that's difficult to defeat. Same with the acid for blood. There's one scene in particular that did a great job emphasizing how corrosive and deadly that stuff is. The main character, Rain, is an okay protagonist. Nothing about her is especially unique or endearing, but she's a fine lead. Overall, Romulus has a small and very young cast, which is a huge contrast to the first movie. I couldn't tell how old any of these people were supposed to be. 16, 20, 25? By the way, I got an answer to a question I've had. I bought this Weyland-Yutani t-shirt a couple years ago, and whenever I wore it in a video, I got 1 or 2 comments on it. But in August, when I just so happened to wear it during my Citizen Kane review, suddenly it got a much larger reaction, and a few people wondered if it was a cheeky commentary on capitalism, which it wasn't. I found it odd that it was getting much more attention, but now I get it. I posted that review on August 25th, this movie came out August 16th, and the Weyland-Yutani logo is everywhere. The name is dropped several times, and the main character wears this shirt, or one very like it. So suddenly my niche, if you know t-shirt turned into relevant merchandise, and I didn't even know. And that brings me to my next point. The logo is just one of many references to earlier films. Everything in this is a throwback. The music, the camera movement, the lights, the style of the buttons and switches and monitors. And this was cool at first, and it was very appealing in short form in the trailer. But the more the references piled up, the more it started to feel kind of like lazy writing. A little fan service is fine. But this went overboard, and many of the references are completely unnecessary. It feels like they're shoved into the film for no other purpose than to make fans say, "Hey, I recognize that!" The lack of originality in the script is almost nauseating. I started keeping track of the things that felt like a copy and paste. I know this isn't a complete list, but these are the things that jumped out at me as I was watching. These are the things that made me roll my eyes the hardest. A cornbread reference. Someone poking someone in the chest and then flicking their chin up when they look down. Watching people enter a dangerous area via screens. Colonial Marines pulse rifle. Training the inexperienced girl to use the Colonial Marines pulse rifle, giving out guns but then telling people not to use them because they'll cause an explosion, going back to rescue a friend from the nest, a ride in a windy elevator, emerging from the windy elevator armed with the gun for a girl power shot, repeat of the most iconic image from Alien 3, a false ending, final face-off with the protagonist in her underwear, or maybe not her underwear, but stripped down to go into cryosleep. Protagonist pulling a suit on. A creature ejected into outer space. A creature's face melting away. That's an Alien Resurrection reference. A voiceover sign-off. And fade from the main character's sleeping face to a planet. Also these quotes. I prefer the term artificial person myself, perfect organism, and get away from her, you. It's the most awkward delivery of Ripley's most famous line from Aliens, and it absolutely did not need to be repeated here. It was so stupid, and even Andy the android seemed embarrassed to be saying it, although I suspect his hesitation is because the alien is not in fact female, so the line didn't make any sense. Would all these things have stood out as much if I hadn't just rewatched Aliens and watched Alien 3 last month and rewatched Alien a year ago? Probably, I think they would, because these are pretty famous, familiar things. Even if it had been 5 years since I last watched them, I would have noticed most of this stuff. Maybe not the cornbread, but most of it. And I just find it hard to believe that nobody said, hey, don't you think we're being too on the nose here? Too heavy-handed? Another thing, the film's kind of hard to follow. It's not always clear what's going on, where characters are, how the whole story connects. Many scenes are dimly lit, so it's hard to see. And the dialogue... I tend to enjoy British accents, but, these guys... Man, the only thing they clearly enunciated was the F word. The return of the late Ian Holm. I'm not a fan. I don't mean I'm not a fan of Ian Holm. I mean I'm not a fan of Ian Holm, but I'm not a fan of Ian Holm. What I mean is, I don't love that they did this. Number one, I don't agree with this whole thing. I know that they had permission from the actor's estate here, but I still don't feel okay with it. Number two, the CGI is rough. I'm saying CGI, I know there were some animatronics involved. A big effort here, and sometimes it was fine, but sometimes... How, after this many years, does it look worse than resurrected Peter Cushing in Rogue One? Number three, I got confused. I thought this was Ash. But no, it's Rook, different android, same model. They're basically doing the same thing that they did with Bishop in Alien 3. But it took me too long to understand that, and I know I'm not the only person who got misdirected on this point. I think the problem is that they had Rook torn in half and covered in fluid, which is not how Ash looked when we last saw him in Alien, but it's similar enough to be confusing. Number four, they just recycled the secondary villain from the first film. Am I the only one who did not think Rain should go back for Andy? This is one of several elements taken from the previous movies, the protagonist going back to rescue a defenseless loved one. First it was Jonesy, then it was Newt. Here, it's Andy the android. There's a nice storyline there. He and Rain have a bond. He's like a younger brother to her. She looks after him. She regretfully lets her friends use him. He gets a new chip that upgrades his system, and he turns into a sociopath whose prime directive is the company's best interest, which is familiar territory. Rain is troubled by this and just wants her friend back. There's a sense of family there, a human-android friendship that is not new to this franchise, but it's antithetical to Ripley's mistrust and aversion to androids. So, okay. The thing is, when Rain makes her decision to risk her life and go back for him, it doesn't warm my heart the way I think it's intended to. It feels like kind of a foolish sacrifice to me. Go back for the cat? Go back for the little girl? But the dysfunctional android that left some people to die? I don't know, I think I'd be okay with leaving him behind. Am I terribly hard-hearted for saying that? The zero-gravity scene was cool, possibly one of the best parts of the movie. I saw it coming. As soon as they introduced the zero-gravity timer when they arrived, I knew that was going to be coming back, and we would probably have xenomorphs floating around. It would be insane for them to float that possibility and then not deliver on it. It was kind of weird to see, but I mostly enjoyed it. It was interesting, visually interesting, with the acid blood floating in yellow-green blobs. I did immediately think that it looked a lot like the Klingon blood in Star Trek VI's zero-gravity sequence. I wasn't anticipating a Prometheus tie-in, given how unpopular those two movies were and how this was advertised as something entirely separate. But they have to introduce the black goo so that they can have the twist reveal after the false ending. Most of the fresh stuff comes in the second half, and I enjoyed the second half more. But the last 10 to 15 minutes is where it goes bonkers. I did foresee that something was wrong with that pregnancy. There are some dead giveaways, but I did not expect that. These movies have always had a thing for gross reproductive imagery from the very beginning. It's kind of a theme here. But still, I was not ready for the birth scene. Merry Christmas! So she births an egg, and I have a question about that, but I'm not going to bring it up because I don't want to be too disgusting. And inside the egg, we get a quick glimpse of a human-looking fetus. I don't know if that's her baby dead or if that's the offspring in infant form. Is she like the queen producing an egg? Why did that happen to her? I don't know. Well, I know she injected the black goo, and I figure that just went straight to the fetus, but, yeah, I have all these questions, but I don't necessarily want to know the answers. And then we meet the hybrid. So freaky. No one spoiled this for me. It's amazing that I hadn't heard anything about this. Yay! This whole sequence filled me with revulsion, and it was supposed to, so they did a good job here. Congratulations. Mission accomplished. It was freaky and disturbing. Was it more disturbing than other disturbing things in previous movies? I don't know. I feel like every movie has at least one really gross sequence. And it kept getting worse, and it was even more awful for me, because I was stuck watching it by myself. My mom was supposed to be watching with me, but she fell asleep, and so here I was. First I was alone with the xenomorphs, which I wasn't really comfortable with, and now this darn thing. This was the most exciting part of the movie, the crazy finale, and I feel like they stuck the landing in a way, and yet it reinforced my impression that the script is severely lacking originality, because the concept of a human xenomorph hybrid was already done in Alien Resurrection. There it was called the newborn, here it's called the offspring. So even in its wildest moments, this movie still has no new ideas. As I was putting this review together, I saw some article headlines where Fede Alvarez was explaining or confirming things in the movie. I don't think that's a good sign that the director, after the fact, has to explain things like that. I think a movie should be able to stand on its own. And some of the details and theories that have been explained don't improve things, in my opinion. Like the confirmation that the guy who got the girl pregnant was her cousin, or that Andy the android is supposed to be autistic. With regard to the former, why did that have to be in there? Is the baby turning out to be a freaky hybrid supposed to be a commentary on incest? And the latter, how does that even make sense? Ultimately, my feelings on Alien Romulus are very mixed. There are things that I liked about the movie. The visuals are good, the aliens are impressive, the effects are very good, the scares, when we eventually get them, are decent. But I didn't form an attachment to any of the characters, I didn't have much fun watching it, and I was disappointed and frankly embarrassed by the onslaught of references and the aggressive way it borrowed from all the other movies. I do have to say, with regard to the sequel, it can't possibly be this unoriginal because they've already repeated everything. What's left? Okay folks, those are my thoughts on Alien Romulus. I hope you enjoyed the video. It's not quite the review I had hoped it would be, but there it is. If you've seen this one, go ahead and share your thoughts on it in the comments below. Just please be nice to each other about it. Opinions differ on this one, and that's okay. Merry Christmas, everybody. I hope you all have a wonderful holiday. I will be back next Saturday with a blooper reel, so stay tuned for that. And thanks for watching.